Do you think that there's a scenario that North America West gets, I don't know, let's say 15 of the 17 spots?
Whoa, 15 of the 17 spots.
I know that was
Maybe
aggressive, but
that was aggressive.
but because it's so strong, I don't know.
Yeah, like I've played with the numbers a little bit. I always try to be maybe a little nicer. Like I was given like 2 extra to West, maybe 5 to like 9 to East, in addition to their base. So that would be like 7 for West and like maybe like
10 to 12.
12. Yeah, 12 to almost up to 15 total for East. They also have said, because I'm only showing the women so far here, that it is based on their specific division. So the women's division could have more in the East than the men, and that'll be done for each.
So what are we seeing when we look at North America East men? Is there the same lopsidedness that we're seeing on the women's field, or is it vastly different?
Well, it helps Brent and helps others that the number one CrossFitter the past 2 years, Justin Medeiros, lives in Vancouver. So that definitely does help. But it's a similar story. There's 5 games athletes back-to-back years for the North American West men, and then there's 9 back-to-back years for the East. That's obviously a little bit closer, not as stark as the women's side, but similar outcomes. Same sort of thing. If you're obviously, we see a lot of focus around the Tennessee region between Nashville and Mayhem. We see a lot obviously focused around some of these camps. There's ones in Florida, obviously, in Boston, and the ones in Tennessee or Vermont. There's not many of those on the west side. Brent's out there sort of by himself, but
alone on an island.
He might like that.
It's my training camp here.
That's his camp.
Right. Wait, show us again.
Yeah. Yeah, we got. You know, actually, I got one training partner here. I got this guy for Christmas. He watches over me. Eric Bugenhagen.
Wow.
Yeah, he's keeping. Yeah, so
he's got his very own training buddy now.
Yeah, that's about it. Yeah, he's a threat though, so keep an eye out for him.
Brent, when you talk to other athletes, have you heard that people are really moving? I'm sure that there are some, but is it this like mass exodus that athletes are trying to get the best shot to advance, so they're packing their bags and really leaving?
I haven't really heard many athletes like speak to me personally asking for advice. There's one athlete that I sort of spoke to who already kind of bounces around. So they were sort of like, "Hey, Brent, what do you think? What have you heard?" Yeah, I think a lot of it'll, people wait to see how it shakes out this year, and then maybe next year there'll be more people going. I think what's interesting is, listening to what Mike had to say about the women's field is there'll be a very crowded podium photo. We went from an era where there were three people on the podium, and you take your photo, and now it was kind of like the 3 on the podium and then 2 standing next to it, because it was 5 sometimes that would make the games from some of these semifinals. And I'm just imagining now in the East, you've got it's like a family photo. There's going to be 12 women and 9 men all smiling together, and it's like, I don't know, what would you make, just a massive pyramid of boxes, and it takes 30 minutes to create this thing? And then also, from a viewing perspective, it's going to be kind of weird because you'll get females in the not even the top heat, but the heat below that, fighting for a game spot. And so it could be kind of cool where you'll have that heat. Maybe the women in the center lanes that are placed 10, 11, 12 are like vying for these game spots. And then you go to the next heat and it's, wow, this is exciting. Now we get to see who wins the event, even though all the women in the top heat have almost certainly secured a games ticket by then. Something like that. It'd just be, I don't know. I mean, it's not a problem I have to deal with, but from the announcer standpoint, it becomes a bit of a different story to tell for sure.
Yes, it does.
So you really have to know your whole roster of athletes. Yeah.
You can't just know your and Tia-Clair. It's like, no, you so there you go.
And you can't even have. It will be an interesting thing because, you remember the story of Will Morad. He was 80 plus points off the podium, and still made it. So you'll see that possibly from the second or third heat is actually still in play, possibly. And then
it'll be 60 men and 60 women, right? So 60 to 10, I think. Anyway, we could go on and on about that, but
right.
Interesting.
So speaking of Tia, I mean, I'm sure there's several athletes that are rejoicing that, she's pregnant. She's obviously taking the season off. And that puts an extra ticket, an extra spot on the line for the CrossFit Games. But does her not being there, does it overall help the region? Does it hurt the region? What are both of your thoughts on like that scenario and conversation?
Yeah, well, I mean, this year, I mean, if let's say she was competing, she might have been competing as an Eastern in the Eastern U.S., right?
Oh, sure.
Right,
I don't know.
If they kept her there, yeah. At this point, we still don't know.
Because that's
you even look at somebody like Roman. Yeah,
I think Roman's going to be an Eastern North American. That he'll be competing in Orlando. That's my understanding, right?
Yeah, that's definitely I think in a press conference, CrossFit even used Roman as the example to say, if you're this type of athlete having these types of travel issues, we can work with you a little bit better within the rules this year versus last.
Right. And I know that the managers have been working with CrossFit, specifically like Roman and some of the other ones, about potentially just competing in the region with wherever their affiliate is or wherever their residency is.
Yeah. Well, same with Ellie. If Ellie Turner is living in the States more and more too, right? So then if Ellie Turner isn't competing in Australia, Tia is not competing in Australia. It's a very different story about how many spots they'll receive, right? So I don't really know. It's hard to say.
Yeah. If it went as it did the last 2 years, as Brent said, you could have just Cara down there. You could have, obviously, there's some athletes that have been on the cusp of making the games and just not made it because others have, or Tia did go back to Oceania, obviously, this past season, and competed there. So if you are Maddie Sturt or some of the other games
Jamie
type
Green,
athletes, then
Georgia Pryor,
So if you're some of them, I think you love it because you could look at Tia. We don't know exactly what Cara's doing. Obviously, she still looks in fairly good shape, but she's done this quite some time. So if she is coming back, I mean, that is probably even a question: is does Cara look at what Tia's doing and say, "Oh, well, I was going to hang it up, but if there's a spot that might be open, it's a great potential for her." That being said, when we were just talking about vacations, with Tia not being around, that doesn't help any of the athletes down in Oceania that were hoping to get a bump for their semifinal or get a few more spots because of the 7-time winner being there. So we'll have to see.
This episode is brought to you by UCAN. Who can? You can. At least I can with UCAN with one of their easy squeeze pouches that give me the energy I need to get through my workout without causing a crash. When I work out early in the morning but don't want to on an empty stomach because we know mid-wan I'm going to be hangry, I grab one of their super easy on the stomach bars. Chocolate almond butter, yes please. I may not be a games athlete yet, but UCAN helps me stay focused and energized during my workouts. It delivers steady release carbs for long-lasting energy without spiking blood sugar levels, the key to sustaining peak performance and focus and recording videos like these. Trusted by top CrossFit pros like Scott Panchik and Emily Rolfe, get your hands on these goodies and even save 20% on your first order with our code CHALKUP, link in the description. Now back to the episode. What about the men's field in Oceania? Does it impact that at all?
They're treated separately, so I wouldn't think so, but same sort of thing. I think theirs is a little bit more standardized. Ricky's down there. He's going to be down there. It doesn't sound like he's moving to the States or at least not coming here until after semifinals. So you could see a little bit more, but I think same sort of thing. Like they get their 3 spots. Ricky obviously did this well this past year, but he doesn't have anything to stand on for 21. So what does that do for some of those athletes where they couldn't make the games, therefore they don't have the ability to actually stand on that for their scoring, but or they were suspended or some other issue, injury, or took time off or switched to teams or something else. where they just don't have that ability. So that could affect Oceania immensely. And then you're adding Tia on top of that, not being there.
So, Brent, with some of these things that we do still have question marks on, I mean, you look at athletes who, whether they were injured, or Roman, who wasn't able to compete at the CrossFit Games but still qualified for several years. Are these situations that the PFAA has inquired to CrossFit about, or you're taking the approach that let's see how the first year goes and then we'll kind of go from there?
Yeah, I mean, we're providing them with just kind of a list of this sort of stuff, and after talking with Mike, we'll have a list and give it to them of, hey, these are some things you can consider. Some of them with like, this is sort of what here are like 2 or 3 options to pick from. And I think what we hope for is just clarity, right? I mean, you're never going to please everyone with every rule, but I think what we want is, as soon as possible, having just as many scenarios as possible written out, like if this, then that, if this, then that. And then just having the rules followed is all you can really ask for. And whether or not it, creates the exact fair looking thing that we want, or they even wanted to start with, it's really just about having just clear rules and stating, if, like even someone like Con Porter, right? He went team last year. I think he's going to go individual this year, and he's got a shot at making the CrossFit Games. He's going to have a good season in Australia. And so, so he has an understanding of what he needs to do to maybe give his semi another spot. It's important. It's important for everyone to just kind of know that as soon as possible, so they can start making decisions for their season. And then, as fans and as athletes, you just want to know the rules of the game as soon as you can, because we never know the workouts, but at least we can know the the scoring system and that sort of thing. The movements and the workouts change, but things like this, I think. So yeah, needless to say, like PFA will be just providing them with just sober second thought of like, hey, here's some concerns, here's some things as athletes competing. These are areas that we're worried about or thinking about or strategizing around, that maybe because they're not competing and they're in the weeds competing, they might not have like, oh yeah, I didn't really think of how that particular instance might play out. So we'll make sure we make a rule for it. So we'll see.
Sure. Mike, is there any other points of topic that you think we should hit on?
Oh, I could go on forever. It is year one. I think that is a piece of it. Obviously, I agree with Brent. Like, more clarity, the better. Like, even if it's not the best rule, but just saying like, well, here's the way we're going to do it. With that, you just have to give it time. Like, if the Open and the quarterfinals now all of a sudden matter immensely, like, you're going to see athletes maybe like Brent, who are trying to actually win every single week. They're repeating workouts, they're doing different things along those lines. That will actually help some of these data points later, years from now. That is also something that this is the place where you sort of have to say like, well, this is what they're doing this year. They could do something completely different next year. So
sure. I
like this one a little bit better. Not that they may care for my specific opinion, but but I like this a little bit better because at least it shows something they can grow on, but it is still very early and they haven't really shown how it's going to all be done yet. So more to come on that.
Brent, what's your bottom line?
Yeah, I think it's good overall. Obviously, as you get into the weeds, there's maybe more questions and that we want to know the answers to. But I'm excited to see how it plays out, and I think it'll work well. And I think you're probably going to have a solid field of athletes at the CrossFit Games, and semifinals will be as interesting as ever. So I think overall, it's just really good. It's going to be fun.
Get the extra boxes for the podium or for the game spot.
Yeah, I want to see like a 3-dimensional, like rotating Def Leppard kind of stage.
Yeah, right.
Where they're all it's just like
just a chessboard
and it's kind of circling around and everyone's waving. I don't know. There's a lot of that's really where the innovation is going to come in. How do we?
Well, now that you brought that up, yeah. I can't get it out of my head. So I'm just like trying to think of all these different scenarios. And when we finally see it, I'm going to be like, oh, they got the idea from Brent.
Torian Pro is going to have flames and just everything and a stage.
Well, and the other kind of interesting thing is prize money. Like, is first place in, or let's say 5th place in Eastern Women's going to be the same as 5th place in Australia or 5th place in Europe, because, so, is there some like magic equation with the dollar amounts where, because yeah, I mean, obviously 3rd place in Eastern women is, or even 4th place in Eastern, 5th, whatever, is kind of more impressive than 5th anywhere else. And so you could be cutting the prize money in North America because last year there were 4 semifinals in North America, and all of them paid out $5,000, $4,000, $3,000, $2,000, $1,000, same as every other semi. But now you just have 2 semis, so is it all of a sudden like 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, or I don't know. That'll be interesting. But semis and regionals has never been about prize money. It's always just been about the ticket. There's never been much prize money there anyway, so I'm sure that won't change too much this year.
Mike, what's your bottom line?
To go on what something Brent was just talking about with the unknown and unknowable of the tests is that's great when it comes to CrossFit and CrossFit Games. It's not great when it comes to how is the season going to work. It looks like CrossFit's going in the right direction here. They've definitely solidified the rule book further, and there's a lot to come with how they're going to allocate these spots. So hopefully there's a little bit more known and knowable coming up in 2023.
All right, guys. Happy New Year. Thanks, Brent. Thanks, Mike.
Happy New Year. Bye.